Welcome to Mastering Your Monday podcast. And this is the show that talks about boundaries, work-life balance, and living a life where you have control. This is for highly driven professionals who want to develop a more balanced professional and personal life and live out their true values. Those who are ready to grab the reins and change the status quo. The professional who's ready to have a life again and who's ready to take a stand, living in a way that you feel respected, valued, and fulfilled each and every day. We talk about topics like setting boundaries, taking risks, life management, and all the tips, techniques, and strategies to help you master your Monday, one day at a time. Hey, this is your host, Michelle O'Neill. And you know that today's subject is all about being alone. And it's something that we don't like to talk about a lot. Isolation, the absence of connection, and it's almost taboo. And so you want to know, is this show for you today? Is this something you need to listen to? Well, don't just throw it to the wayside. I want you to wait a minute and just listen a little while, because if you're tired of feeling isolated or feeling alone, when you go through things, feel like there's no one that you can talk to, or even if you're embarrassed and feel shame or have kept quiet about things in the past, been silent about things in your past because you're afraid of how others will see you or receive you. And if you're ready to really move forward into the light and no longer feel that heaviness of darkness and shame around you anymore, then you know what? This is the episode for you. And we're going to talk about feeling alone and isolated and disconnected, because so many of us go through that at some times of our lives. And so there's three things that I really, really, really want to touch on this week, this time. It's about isolation. It really is detrimental to our health. And one of the things that I've found in some of the groups that I've been in is people talking about the fact that, especially as you get older or as you've gone through life and you deal with things like divorce or moving of jobs, and it's harder to make friends again, those do or die friends, those people that you can depend on. It's a lot harder when we get older to make those meaningful relationships. And so what do? And then the second thing is, we really are relational creative creatures of creation. What I want to say is, I just get so excited. I just talk all over myself. But the thing is, we are relational. And it's so important that we have some type of relationship somewhere. And finally, you are never, ever, ever alone. Never feel that you're alone, that you're the only one that's going through something. You aren't alone. But nobody can tell you that they're going through it too. Nobody can speak to what you're dealing with if you don't share, if you don't tell them. How do we know? How do we know? So don't be afraid to share the things that you are going through. Just excuse me, just be very selective and careful who you share with. So the first thing I want to touch on is the detrimental aspect of isolation on our health. You know, Isolation and loneliness, well, they're actually two different things. And one of the things I think of when we think about isolation is the fact that isolation is actually used as a punishment a lot of times in our history. It's used in concentration camps, it's used in prison camps, we actually use it with our kids. If you really think about what is time out, well, time out is when we put our child in the corner or we tell them go to their room and we let them think about the things that they have done, how their action has caused them to be isolated. We are using isolation as a punishment, and it's a form of no social connection. This is what we are teaching, that isolation is a punishment. So we grow up already understanding that to be ostracized, to be put away from society, is a form of punishment. And if you doubt that is important, that is really important to our makeup, to our psyche, then I encourage you to actually think about one of the most important books in our lifetime. And I'm a woman of faith, so my faith is so important to us. But I want to just look real quick at Genesis 2:18 through 23. And Genesis 2:18 talks about that. Then the Lord said, "It's not good." You get that? It's not good for man to be alone. So what God does is he makes a helper who is just right for him. So even our creator, if you believe in him, even our awesome creator understood how important it was not for us to be alone, not only to have a relationship to him, but also to have a relationship with each other. And so it was important. And isolation and loneliness, it steals our joy because we feel so disconnected and so despondent. So it stills our joy. And there is actually, here's a cool fact. Well, I don't call it cool because it's a sad fact, is that there's actually an epidemic of loneliness and isolation where half of US alone, half of the US adults say they feel alone, and it is especially true for our adolescents because they feel that there's this bullying going on, and they feel that it's so important for them to feel liked and included that they can't really be who they are, and they can't operate in the trueness of who they are becoming. And so because of that, they feel apart and feel isolated. And then our young adults who are also looking for that acceptance, that feeling that they are part. And then mature adults, where I just touched on earlier, is the fact that you've gone through so much of life, you've lost people, and those people that your life has changed. And remember how we say that we grow apart? Well, we've grown apart from those people that were a part of um, our growing up. We're doing different things. We have different, what do you call it? Different experiences in our lives now. And so we've grown apart, and we have to find those new people in our new atmosphere and sphere of life. So those are things that are going on. It is an actual epidemic that so many of us are feeling alone. And then you topple that with COVID, where we're having a forced isolation. And so, especially if we stay there, if we allow ourselves to reside there, we begin to lose our sense of reality. Our reality becomes what we see on TV, what we listen to, what we read, and we lose that sense of connection and reality. It's downright painful and torturous. And then understanding whether you are an introvert or extrovert, where really an introvert does not mean that you don't want to be around people, but that you have to have that time away to actually have that time to recharge and be able to deal with um, the different aspects of other people. So one of the things that I understand how important, and it took a long time because I'm an introvert, and my daughter, well, she's actually an extrovert. And I never could understand why it was so important for her to be around people. And we homeschooled her for a while. And I'm like, this is great. She has me, she has my undivided attention. She's able to learn things. I'm able to teach her things that she never would get in school. But she always needed that. extra interaction with others, with her peers, with her friends. And so I made sure, because I understood at least that part, I made sure that she was in play groups and that we did field trips and other things with other people, because she actually needed that. That was so important to her that she had that part. So understand that we don't understand what others need, but there are those who need more interaction more so than us. And then when you don't have that interaction, when you're not dealing with other people, you're actually more susceptible to illness. Not having that interaction, it can contribute to our heart disease. They always, and I keep saying, but they always talked about, and I thought it was really funny, that those who were married, that the couples that were married live longer than those who were single. And you would think that, if you're single, that you would have less stress, struggles, um, different personalities that you have to deal with. But it was also that feeling of connection, knowing that there's someone that you could talk to, knowing that there was someone that you could rely on, that was so detrimental to your health. And that's why it's so important that we build those communities, that we build that front row. Um, that is so important to our lives. And the other thing that affects your illness is that you feel that fatigue and that tiredness all the time because of your isolation, and then you're more in tune to chronic pain. So these are all things that you're more susceptible for to when you're isolated, and when you have low human connection. So important. And then you're able to deal with depression and cognitive struggles. Have you found yourself, when you're dealing with one of the things, I've found that when I'm dealing with more isolation of the COVID-19, and not being around people, not talking to people as much, I really have to focus on what I'm saying and what I'm thinking about, because my mind is all over the place. And so I found that I was more focused when I've had those, what I call adult conversations. And those are so important. Even stay at home moms. It was so important when I was homeschooling, is to have those adult conversations. A joke that me and my husband share all the time is the fact that sometimes when he comes home and I'm talking to him, and I'm going a mile a minute sharing with him my thoughts, the things that went on that day. And he's like, got to get your 2,000 words in, huh? And that goes back to marriage group that we were in, a marriage study that we were in. And I remember the teacher saying that it's a known thought that where men only have to have, and I can't even remember the amount that of words that a man needs to get in a day, but it was way less than women. And we as women, we need at least 2,000 words a day that we have to get in. So not only do you have to get your 2,000 or 5,000 steps in, you got to get your 2,000 words in too. And so that's a standing joke with us. When I have a lot to say, he says, "You're trying to get your 2,000 words in, huh?" Well, in some aspects, that's true. I do need to get what's in me out. I do need to share it. So one of the things about solitary confinement, that punishment we're talking about, it significantly increases our anxiety and our panic attacks. So if you find yourself over anxious and having attacks, have you been isolating yourself? Have you been keeping yourself away from others? It also facilitates paranoia, because you're starting to look at things in different ways, and you're also less able to think clearly. And that's the thing I was talking about with cognitive thinking. Is one of the things is because your mind is going a mile a minute thinking about and worrying about so much, you don't think as clearly. And when you're not thinking clearly, when you're not cognitive, when you're paranoid, when you are leaving, when you're anxious, think about it. we're leaving ourselves susceptible to manipulation, to the manipulation of others. And that is so sad. So, um, just recently, because I realized how this affects us, I reached out to a friend of mine and we were talking about the thing of isolation, and she's single. So I knew she would come at it at a different aspect and she would share with me. So I just asked, I said, I asked her, what do you feel isolated, and what does that feel like? How does that feel? And she said, you feel like you're all alone, like no one really wants to hear what you have to say. And when you do want to say something, you're asking yourself, who is it that I can reach out and share this with? Nobody wants to hear. And hearing that, it really hurt my heart. And I had to share with you, you're not alone. It's okay to reach out. Call me. Just tell me at that time. I just want to vent. I just want to share. And I don't have to give you a reason why. I don't have to give you all the answers if I know that's not what you're looking for. So I just want you to know to reach out to those that you know you can. And if you feel comfortable, reach out to me, even in the comments. Just share with me what that feels like, because we don't know. And when we don't know, we can't help. We can't help. So, another one of the things that why it's so important to be relational is another chapter in the Bible for me is Ecclesiastes, and that is so important because it's a book of knowledge. And a lot of people think, oh, but those things aren't relative. I mean, relative to the things that we are dealing with today. Well, they are, because these are things that I found to deal with isolation and being alone. Ecclesiastes 4:9 says, two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. So, how much more fun is it when you're doing something with someone else? It's great to get stuff accomplished, but I'm even right now in what we call work sessions where a bunch of us get together on Zoom right now because of the isolation, and we get together and we work together so that while you're working on the things that you want to accomplish, you can run ideas by each other. You can do what do they call it, brainstorming. You can talk about things on your mind. So we're able to do that. Two are better than one. And verse 10, so if either of them fall down, one is there to help the other up. And just think about it when you're on a walk, how much more wonderful, how wonderful it is to walk with someone else, not only because you can talk to each other, because there's safety in numbers. Why do you think the military has that buddy system and they tell you not to go anywhere alone? Because there's always help there. And then the other thing, but pity falls on anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. We need each other. And also, if two lie down together, oh, this is one of my favorites because this is about marriage. If two lay down together, they will keep each other warm. And that's something that I experienced with my husband. And one of our jokes is when I get in bed and my hands are cold and I touch him. He says, "Okay, all right, it's like that, is it, huh?" And so we can keep each other warm. That's one of the things they tell you when you're left, when you're climbing a mountain, or you get stranded in the cold, is that if there's two together, that you have to huddle together. And actually, they say you need to huddle together, skin to skin, and then wrap whatever you have around you. Is because you stay warmer skin to skin. So that's another reason why relationships are so important. And also because when you're together, I don't know if you watch, I love action heroes like like, Spider-Man, Wonder Woman, and all them. And one of the things you'll see when they get together and they fight and they're back to back, but they're fighting together. And it says, the one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. Two can defend themselves. And you can't see what's behind you. And I don't know if you, it's funny if you would see me now, I'm turning sideways so that as if someone has their back to me. And if I had someone, they have my back. You ever say that saying, I got your back? It's because if someone's behind you, you can see what they can't see, and they can see what you can't see. And you're so much powerful than that way. So health, the thing is that it's not just any kind of relationship. It's a healthy relationship. Those are the things that you want to cultivate, you know, and I don't know if you remember that one of the highest death rates is when people retire or when people lose their spouse. Usually the fatality rate, the death rate is usually within, if not a few years, even a few months, because that camaraderie, that companionship is no longer there. So it is so important because they no longer want to be alone. It just doesn't mean the same. Life doesn't mean the same. So I want to leave you with this, that aloneness does not mean loneliness. And some people have faced the challenge of being alone for extended period of time. you know, it's good in the aspect of personal growth. So, our being alone during this time of the pandemic or during times of isolation, when you go away for a week, I mean, not isolation, but when you go away for like a time over the weekend, when you want to get away to for a time of solitude, well, those things are great because those are things that we use for personal growth, and we don't stay there. And that's the key, that we don't stay there, but it's in a result and it's a reason for personal growth, to include emotional growth, to include understanding our relationship with others, feeling closer to our family and friends, or just having a better perspective of life as a result of that time alone, but not isolation. The thing, it takes effort. And so when we're alone, we can't blame others, and we have to take, it allows us to take responsibility and really look at things in the totality and the reality of what they are. And then we allow ourselves to take responsibility for our part in things. And it's so important that we build our own social supportive networks of family and friends. I like to call it my front row. Who do you allow in your front row? Who are the top 5 people that you can go to and rely on? And then we also need our professional networks. And we have our social media groups and our Zoom live groups. But these are ways that we can still stay connected. And I want to encourage you also, if none of those work for you, is to do something creative and join with others who are interested in the same things. If you like walking, do a trail group. If you like painting, create a group or be a part of a group that likes the painting. If you like cooking, all those things that you love, join groups for those things. If you like reading, there are book clubs, whatever, but do it with someone else. And then I want to encourage you to focus on someone else and how you can help and serve them. A lot of times it's best to just get out of ourselves and do something with someone else and focus on helping someone else, someone that needs, join an organization, helping someone in their home. Is there someone old in your neighborhood, older in your neighborhood? I hate saying old, mature. There you go. Is there someone mature in your neighborhood that you're willing to, from time to time, help them by going to just have a conversation with them so they no longer feel alone? And above all, share and talk about what you feel in your professional area. Who can you talk to there? And then a trusted individual, personal, you know, address your negative thoughts and your underlying loneliness in the first place. What's causing you to feel that way? Why do you feel alone? Is it because you can't be who you want to be? I want you to know that it's okay to say you're not okay, because we're not perfect and we can't be okay all the time. This last year has been riddled with one crisis or an unexpected event over and over for me and for so many of us. And sometimes, it got to the point where I found myself on the floor wondering how am I going to make it through this day? And then one of the things that worked for me was actually the serenity prayer. And the first 4 lines that most people remember is, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I shared this with someone, and they said, you know what? That's your next book. And so this past year, I spent time in 2020, and I actually spent the time to write a book about making it through and not feeling alone. And I shared how I got through, how I made it through, relying on the serenity prayer. And so if this podcast has struck a chord with you and you really want to chat further, I'll share with you. Just reach out to me, and I'd love to share with you, maybe in the comments below, maybe where you can get in touch with me. But I also have a book called I'll Make It Through, Managing Life When All Hell Breaks Loose. And you can find that at masteringyourmonday.com/bundle, because I encourage you to get the journal and the book together. But now let's leave this heaviness. And I say, catch the replays of this podcast, and catch this podcast on wherever you subscribe, whether it's I'm still caught up in the moment, but whether it's Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Spotify, wherever you'd like to catch this podcast. And please share it with others. But subscribe, leave your comments, and I can't wait to hear from you again. Until next time, take care. I want to thank you for listening to the Mastering Your Monday podcast. I hope you learned at least one tip or technique you can walk away with and implement today. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show, and let us know how much you enjoyed it and what you learned from this episode. We honor your time and your commitment to Mastering Your Monday podcast. And as always, we want to remind you, you are cherished, respected, valued, and in control. See you on the next episode.